I've been walking these streets for 25 years, pounding the pavements. I know what's going on in the back rooms. I know what's going on in the boardrooms. What's the Deal is the place where the purple people hang out. We're the only show on television that allows a Democrat, a Republican, and an independent to come down and talk it out. The #1 show on television that always focuses on crypto. We tell you what's the real deal.
Once you've got a several trillion-dollar problem on your hand, the problem can become systemic, global.
A lot of people at the film festivals are saying you guys kind of predicted what was going to happen.
Good afternoon and welcome to this week's edition of What's the Deal on Newsmax TV. I'm John Tobacco. We've gotten into so many topics on What's the Deal. We try to figure out what is the actual deal when you hear all this noise from the left and all this noise from the right, but what's right down the middle? And right here on What's the Deal, we break down the middle. Instead of just sitting in the studio this week and bringing you the news, I decided to get out there and engage a little bit more than usual. We went out to our hometown, Staten Island, New York, to hear from our newly minted freshman Democratic Congressman, Max Rose, who held a town hall. And here's a little bit of what you saw in local politics, democracy with a small d.
Then you have to look at the fact that the vast majority of undocumented immigrants in this country are coming from people overstaying their visas or people who are not returning to the asylum court.
Now, when you get out of the studio and you want to get into some civic engagement, you can't just sit there and listen to all this stuff. If you don't get involved, if you don't ask the questions, then you really don't have a right to be a cynic. So when the time came and Congressman Rose fielded my question, here's his first reaction.
This recently cast 2 votes, one to allow 16-year-olds to vote, and 2 to allow undocumented immigrants to have voting rights in local and municipal election. Is it your position that 16-year-olds, undocumented immigrants should be allowed to vote?
Now, Max, he seems like an energetic, enthusiastic new candidate. He's representing Staten Island and Brooklyn, so he's got to walk a very thin line between the Republicans and the Democrats. But it seems like so far he's towing the line with Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats. He took my question about illegal immigrants who are 16 years old being allowed to vote, and he sliced it in 2. On the first part, Congressman Max Rose, should 16-year-olds be allowed to vote?
School shootings have skyrocketed. You don't think that 16-year-olds living in fear when they go to school? You're wrong. So you're right. I think that a 16-year-old has a right in this day and age to a say in what our gun legislation looks like. Has a right to determine the fact that we have elected officials who are willing to say that you cannot buy a gun from a gun fair or over the internet.
Okay, fair enough. He's got his opinion. I've got mine. My daughters are 17 and 20, and although I try to get them engaged in civics and politics, they're really not that interested in it. So I don't know why people think 16-year-olds are really going to be involved and interested in politics, other than Democrats, who have a majority, can get their favorite voters to get their kids to vote. But now this, all the Democrats in the House also voted for illegal immigrants to have voting rights in local and municipal elections. So not only can 16-year-olds come over the border illegally, they can saunter their way up here to New York and soon other places where it may just be allowed by federal law for illegal immigrants who are as young as 16 years old to vote. And when I asked Max Rose this question, is it your position that 16-year-old illegal immigrants should be allowed to vote, he took the high road and he started tap dancing. Here's where he took it.
This was a last-minute piece of whatever thrown into an anti-corruption bill because Republicans were afraid to actually vote to drain the swamp, and so they decided to play games.
Is your position to prevent them from voting or not?
My position is very, very simple, Ron. And again, I respect your service. If I am giving a real piece of legislation that is constitutional, that talks about, I watch people I love in combat get hurt, defending our Constitution. I spoke to you earlier, I spoke to this entire group earlier about how I watched with pride as one of my soldiers swore another oath and became a citizen in this country and earned the right to vote. This is something I take very, very importantly. Very important. And if I am given a real piece of legislation that's constitutional, and I doubt the constitutionality here as it applies to school board elections, then of course I'll vote on the rights, on the constitutional side. Of course. But that's not what this was. This was games.
I went there with an open mind. I asked the questions on behalf of our audience right here on What's the Deal, so the country can know, does Max Rose and the Democrats under Nancy Pelosi believe that 16-year-olds who are illegal immigrants should have a voice in U.S. elections? And as it stands right now, their answer to that is yes. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Max. We'll check back in. We'll get out in the streets. We'll talk to people. We'll find out what's really happening. I'm going to do more to get out there and get some one-on-one engagement with our politicians so that hopefully we can bring you their real deal on what they're thinking. And right now, if you ask me, Max Rose is thinking 16-year-old illegal immigrants should be allowed to vote in our elections. Action-packed show tonight, but coming up right after this, Danielle DiMartino Booth, the author of Fed Up, an insider story about what really goes on at the Federal Reserve Bank. She's going to tell all tonight, and what Danielle knows about the Federal Reserve Bank will be shocking to you. Stay tuned right after this. Danielle DiMartino Booth, author of Fed Up, on What's the Deal. Hey, welcome back. You're watching What's the Deal on Newsmax TV. I'm John Tobacco. Every week we try to bring you real guests, not the talking heads you see on the mainstream media, but people who know where the rubber meets the road. And tonight we have a very special guest with us. We have Danielle DiMartino Booth joining us. She's a global thought leader on monetary policy and economics. She's an author of the book Fed Up, an insider's take on why the Federal Reserve is bad for America. I agree. You're joining us tonight on What's the Deal. Danielle, welcome. Thanks for joining us tonight.
So happy to be here.
Tell us how you made the journey from journalist to the Federal Reserve insider back to journalism.
How did all that happen? I think my roots were always in writing. When I was on Wall Street, there was this great big Chinese wall that separated the ability for people who were in sales to make their own opinions public. And that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, so I ended up going to Columbia Journalism School at night after the market closed. So I got my second master's then, and after 9/11, ended up leaving the industry for a brief period of time, and somehow, someway landed at the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, advising Richard Fisher, a non-PhD in economics, a regular guy who started out on Wall Street like you.
So how does an Italian girl from Wall Street in New York City end up in Texas? It sounds a little bit like a fish out of water situation.
You know, the thing is, sometimes love calls you. So that was the thing. Long distance dating got old, and so off I moved to Dallas. Anybody who's read Liar's Poker will recognize that I said equities in Dallas. So I signed a non-compete, agreed to leave the industry, and ended up writing a column at the Dallas Morning News of all places. At some point, Warren Buffett said, "Who are you?" Invited me out to Omaha. I ended up with an international following, and at that point the Fed called, and I answered the phone and said I will go serve my country, which I did.
So let's go back to 2008, an infamous year in American history, certainly in American markets. You rightly were in a small group of people who predicted the 2008 financial crisis. What did you see back then that all these so-called experts missed?
Well, being that I was a product of Wall Street and trading floors, I think that we would both agree that if somebody's talking and joking about 125% loan to value mortgages that were quote unquote toxic, and you're joking about it on the trading floor, that it kind of raises a red flag, and you're like, well, gee, wait a minute, these might be problematic in the end. And because the subprime mortgage crisis grew to be, which was public knowledge, not at the Fed, but I mean, they didn't realize what they were looking at. It was public information at the time. But once you've got a several $1 trillion problem on your hand, you have to understand that the problem can become systemic, global, whatever you want to call it, because if you recall, the first problems that emerged from the subprime crisis happened in, off the radar scale German Landesbanks that clocked the first big losses because our rating agencies, Standard & Poor's, Moody's, Fitch, they'd all given the AAA stamp of approval.
Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac had these mandates from Democratic
Absolutely.
policymakers like Charles Schumer that
So it all
every
seemed-
American should have a white fence in front of their house. And smart guys out there started shorting mortgages into these
They did.
mortgage-backed
Of
security
course they did.
tranches. I was having some work done remodeling on my house. And the carpenter who was working on my basement, when he was taking a little lunch break, he said, "Hey, Mr. Bacco, come over for a minute. Are you thinking about refinancing this house?" And I said, "No, not really. Why?" He said, "Well, I'm doing mortgages now on the side. And they have this new mortgage called a coffee mortgage where you don't have to make payments for 2 years and it's 0 interest." And in my head, I was saying, wait a minute. This whole mortgage thing is overcooked.
Way
when
out
my
of hand.
carpenter, who's a skilled guy in his vocation, is also selling mortgages. So I think we kind of were on the same page for different
You know,
reasons
at
back
the time, Quicken Loans had smart loans, which were effectively negative amortization loans.
then. The dumbest loan you can
The
get.
dumbest
and they
loan you
call
could
them
get, and they called them smart loans, and it was nationwide.
So before we wrap up, I want to get to your book, Fed Up, and journalism, Wall Street, Federal Reserve Bank, and then you write Fed Up, which is really an insider's take on what's happening. What made you write a book?
Well,
I know how hard it is. I think about writing
no, there
books.
was nothing easy about it, and trust me, I'm on nobody's Christmas card list, period, end. But in 2009, 2010, the Federal Reserve recognized that the inflation metric that they use to make monetary policy, to set interest rates, they recognized that it was broken, and after some deep soul searching, decided to do absolutely nothing about it. And, well, I got really mad about that.
You know, I've been for about 7 or 8 years on many of the other major business networks, Fox News, Fox Business, CNBC. And when we were at zero, I thought that was really a Ponzi scheme that benefited the big banks.
It has.
And I thought all along that to spur the economy would be to raise rates to around here, 2.5%, 3%, because the banks had no incentive to lend to small businesses and take risk when they can borrow at zero and buy treasuries and get paid 2.5%, right?
That's absolutely right.
I happen to think, and this is contrary to the Fed and other people, but I happen to think as interest rates get a little higher, it's actually, there's a point where it's good for the economy because the bank will take a little more risk and lend to that guy who wants to extend his business, hire 10 more people, do a little capital expenditure because there's money in it.
Of course, there's huge benefit in it, and the shame is that the markets, the futures markets, have begun to price in that the Fed is going to reduce interest rates, and the only thing that you can deduce from that is that they're going to reduce interest rates back into the zero bound. And what good does that do anybody? Nothing at all. Nothing at all. It's a sad state. Because initially when Jay Powell came into office, it seemed like he was going to be a stronger money man, and that has not turned out to be the case.
You think some of his decision making is political or strictly economical?
I don't think it's political. I really don't. I think that he saw the whites of the eyes of how stretched the credit markets have become and was frightened by it. We have mutual funds, we have exchange traded funds and leveraged loans and high yield bonds. 20% of the stuff trades every day. The other 80% is God knows what, and there's no liquidity in it. So I think he saw in December, because we had 41 straight days of no high yield issuance, a record in U.S. history. I think he saw that the problem was so magnificent that he couldn't tackle it, so he backed down. That was the Powell pivot.
Before we go, what's the main thing our audience, we're trying to educate our audience, we're trying to keep them aware every week of things that are probably simple to us, but they just don't get it. What's one tip you can give our audience to look out for in their portfolios for 2019?
There's just no shame in cash. Sorry, I don't mean to be a wet bag of mice, but at times like this, if nothing makes sense, then you should acquiesce to the fact that nothing makes sense. Step onto the sidelines. At least the Fed has raised interest rates such that you can get 2-3% on your money. Call it a day and wait for the lunacy to play out.
So you heard it here first. Cash is king. I think we all know that. I want to thank you very much for joining us on What's
Absolutely.
the Deal. When we have interest and stories in the economy where we need a real insider, hopefully we can call on you to
Absolutely.
come back and join us. Coming up next It's another discussion about dollars and cents, and to make sense of it all, the Players segment is Stephen Williams, author of Blockchain, The Next Everything, and Joseph Jaffe, marketing expert and author of Built to Suck, The Inevitable Demise of the Corporation and How to Save It. You're watching What's the Deal on Newsmax TV. We'll be back right after this. What's the deal? We have an American success story. Mike Lindell, the inventor of MyPillow.
Everyone in here drank a cup of this Elevate Smart Coffee.
Come on down to Cantina Bella. There's tacos everywhere.
Tacos
And,
everywhere.
Oh, wow.
And let's see how we can help you grow your business.
If you have an idea that you want to bring to a national audience, reach out to us.
You'll be right there with any success that I have, and thank you for helping out.
I think these guys are on to something. Hey, welcome back. Now every week we try to bring you the experts, like we just had a Federal Reserve Bank insider. And now we go to the new economy, where we talk about every week blockchain, Bitcoin. We've explained to our audience over and over again the big difference between blockchain and Bitcoin. Bitcoin is an application. Blockchain is an enterprise solution that will have many, many applications and use cases over time. Tonight, to keep our audience educated and aware, we have an expert on Bitcoin and blockchain and all that good stuff. We have Stephen Williams joins us. He's the author of Blockchain, The Next Everything. And Joseph Jaffe joins us as well. He's a marketing expert, and he's the author of Built to Suck, The Inevitable Demise of the Corporation and How to Save It. Guys, thank you for joining us on What's the Deal? Stephen, I want to start with you and ask, when you talk about blockchain being the next everything, I tend to agree with you, but what do you mean by that in titling your book?
So I think it's a foundational technology. It was made to support Bitcoin, but as you said, it's a foundation of many, many other uses. Basically, blockchain is a ledger, and you can build whatever you want on top of it using the security and the and the ledger quality is there.
What do you think over time blockchain can be used for that it's not currently being advertised as?
Well, some of the things are kind of fanciful, but pretty cool. Like I can imagine a company of self-driving cars that actually own themselves and operate via smart contracts on the blockchain with no humans involved. That's one kind of crazy thing.
So the cars would own themselves, who would own their own businesses, and they would get paid and pay their own expenses,
and buy
all
more,
on the blockchain.
And buy more cars and get bigger and bigger.
Have no human labor cost, other than the developers and miners who keep the blockchain going.
Yeah, and when one of the cars breaks down, it calls the local repairman and comes over and fixes it.
Drives itself over.
Pays it with some Bitcoin. Yeah.
Joe, you're a marketing expert, so as all these everythings keep popping up around blockchain, I would assume there'll still be marketing going on for these things. But you've said that Donald Trump is going to make the whole 2020 election about socialism. Why do you think that?
Well, I think it's already happening. And the messaging itself it's interesting because from a marketing perspective, many of the democratic ideals and much of the platform is being repositioned as a socialist agenda. So ultimately, as Yogi Berra once said, if you come to a fork in the road, take it. I think the Democratic Party has to decide, do they go to the left, quite literally, or do they go to the right, or maybe I should say to the center, and almost reclaim many of their ideals, taking care of, the blue-collar worker, for example.
I almost feel like Donald Trump himself couldn't have written a better script than the Democrats embracing socialist ideals, because all he has to do is sit back and say, we're not socialists. So they're kind of giving it to him on a platter there.
Well, again, it's up to them in terms of how they want to respond. And ultimately, part of the message, I think Elizabeth Warren said quite emphatically in the town hall the other night, don't be ridiculous. I'm a capitalist.
And now you wrote the book Built to Suck, which is about, I guess, the American corporation. Why do you think the demise of the corporation is inevitable? Is it because of what Stephen is talking about, AI, artificial intelligence, that these entities will just be their own entities and corporations are unnecessary?
Yes, and certain technologies like blockchain are democratizing all of not just marketing, but destabilizing business models, entire businesses the entire toll booth business, if that even was an industry, is gone. I think Forrester predicts that by 2027, about 25 million jobs are going to be lost to automation. So the central thesis in the book is that if the corporation were an empire or a civilization, it would go like every other
At some
civilization.
point, it will crumble.
It
is
has
what
to.
you're saying.
It has to crumble, and specifically because they've become, the corporation is slowing down when the world is speeding up.
I want to ask you guys both a couple of rapid fire questions, but what do you think about the economy right now?
I just hope that that everybody is paying attention to the changing landscape of technology. Because right now, Facebook seems to be trying to transform itself into a privacy company rather than a data for hire company, and there's just so much going on, and I get afraid sometimes that the slow wheels of government are not able to keep up. So
it's good until it isn't, and I agree with Stephen, because what we're seeing is, even if you look at these top line indicators like job creation versus job loss, what they aren't telling us are people that are losing their jobs and may never get another job or will struggle to be able to learn new skills. And that's going to have medium and certainly long-term implications, for sure.
So like worn down 51-year-old, 25-year Wall Street veterans, I may never get a job again?
Excluding them.
I have a shot at getting a job again.
Totally.
you got to start a newsletter, and
The advice is very simple. The key to success is to suck less. It's that simple.
I like that. Wow, that's very manly.
And it fits in it fits in a tweet. So
okay, he said it, so don't get mad at me. But the key to success is to suck less. Tax season's upon us, guys, and some people on the left are saying, people are getting less of a return, and people on the right are saying, well, you got more in your paycheck all year long. Do you think Trump's policies were like rocket fuel for the economy, or do you think this is a damper?
well, it seems like they were rocket fuel, but rocket fuel burns out. That's how I see it.
yeah, I mean, again, it is the constant debate between two sides in terms of the merits of trickle-down economics versus being able to lift up and uplift from the ground up. And I guess we'll see in 2020 which prevails.
Well, I think it's almost like, institutional derangement when people think my tax return check is my payday for the year, right? Because people have just been like Pavlov's dog, trained that you pay your taxes all year long, and at the end of the year you get a refund. And when I get a refund, that means because I got money back for something that was owed to me.
You can use your money all year long instead of.
I'd rather
losing the
use
interest,
it or have it in my pocket all year long to spur growth, grow my business, maybe hire people, make capital expenditures.
What to me was really scary was during the government shutdown, how we learned how many people were, and in fact across the board, are living paycheck to paycheck and don't have anything saved for a rainy day. That's really scary, and I think we have to, certainly as a country, we have to be able to address that. But at the same time, there are new innovative models, from GoFundMe to Kickstarter to microfinancing and micro-lending. And I think, to your point, we've got to get beyond this idea of waiting once a year for that tax refund. We can do better than that.
I think so too. I want to thank you guys for not making this segment suck for me. This was informative. First time on the show. We usually, try to not bring on, these real talking heads with hubris on the major networks, and bring on people that know what's happening and put it in regular man's terms, and you guys did just that for us.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank
It
you
was a
very
pleasure.
much for joining us tonight on What's the Deal. You're watching What's the Deal, the show that doesn't kneel. We talked about the Federal Reserve Bank, we talked about the economy, we talked about blockchain, all that good stuff. And now we're going in the political powerhouse segment. We're going left versus right, a Democrat, a progressive Democrat, and a Republican coming up right after this to talk about immigration, impeachment, collusion, all that good stuff and more. Right after this, you're watching What's the Deal. Welcome back. We talk about the Federal Reserve Bank, we talk about blockchain, we talk about what's affecting corporations today, and all the good business stuff is out there. But what we really want to talk about every week is where politics meets the economy. Tonight we have just that for you. Bill Cortez, Republican strategist, joins us, and Michael Belzer, progressive community organizer and Democratic activist, potentially Democratic candidate for a seat to be named later in the Bronx. Guys, thanks for joining me. I want to start off with Elizabeth Warren. She's the Democratic presidential candidate. She's allegedly pawned herself off as a Native American for years. Now she's apologized and said she's probably not a Native American, but now she wants to get rid of the Electoral College. In a town hall broadcast recently on CNN, she said presidents should be selected by the popular vote. Take a look at this clip.
We can have national voting, and that means get rid of the Electoral College and everybody.
Bill, I want to start with you. What do you think about the elimination of the Electoral College, like Elizabeth Warren says?
Well, what's interesting is we didn't hear this when they were winning presidential elections, right? We haven't heard this in a good 16 years until back in 2000. George W. Bush won the Electoral College and lost the popular vote. The problem here is that Democrats want to change the rules when it doesn't fit what their scheme, right? When they don't have enough Supreme Court justices, they want to expand the Supreme Court. When they want to change how judges are approved through the Senate, Harry Reid uses the nuclear option, which obviously is now turned against them. This is just another one. They want to change the rules now because it doesn't fit their scheme. So it's absurd. I don't think it's going to have any traction. But I think it's just another one of Warren and the rest of the Democrats trying to change the rules as they move through the game.
Mike, do you think the Democratic Party is changing the rules a little bit because they're so losers?
I think abolishment of the Electoral College is an easy solution. What I'm personally in favor of is ranked choice voting. So in ranked choice voting, we won't have this spoiler candidates. We will have more campaigns based around ideas. I think coupled with separating the president from the VP, instead of having them run together like it used to be, that they would run their own independent campaigns, we could end up with, if there's a Democratic president, with a Republican vice president. And this could be a way of making sure that where people don't feel like they're spoiling their vote, that they're not voting for the lesser of two evils, that they're actually voting with their ideals in mind.
It's rare that I agree with our person who's on the left, but I tend to agree with you on that it's one way to maybe skin the cat without ruining the constitutionality of the Founding Fathers in the Electoral College. Former Texas Congressman Beto O'Rourke, his presidential campaign is already underway, and he's got $6 and change million in the first day, blowing out Bernie, blowing out everyone with these small dollar donations. How do you think he's been able to raise so much money, Bill?
Well, listen, he's coming in kind of in the form of a Barack Obama, kind of young, energetic, right? Versus a group of people that are all kind of mushy, all kind of in out of the same area here. I think Beto is tapped into something here, clearly. And whether it's his youth, whether it's kind of his energy, the ideas he's bringing, I think he's kind of changing the game a little bit here. He sat down with Barack Obama before he jumped in the race. I think some of Obama's people have been advising him, whether it's quietly or more overt. So seriously, clearly he's tapped into something. But you get these glowing Vanity Fair, 6-page stories in there. I came away reading that from a guy that really, his story is not that inspiring, not that impressive. He came from a fairly privileged background, married a fairly wealthy woman, and kind of floated through life and decided to run for Congress.
What the hell?
So
robbed a couple of houses, had a couple of DWIs.
Right. So
what do you, from your perspective, because you, I would think, look a little more favorably on candidates like Beto, who are young and energetic and coming with more left-sided ideas. What do you think he's tapped into?
So this idea that progressives and people on the left automatically just go for younger leadership, I don't quite share that view. I think a lot of people have been behind Bernie Sanders, and he's obviously a much older gentleman. And anybody that I would support would either be Bernie or somebody standing on Bernie's platform. I think this hall is an impressive amount of numbers, but we've seen in this cycle that white male candidates are seem to have a great ability to raise cash. I know I didn't follow his race very closely for Senate, but I know he's gone back on some of his donor pledges, specifically on fossil fuels. So while this money is impressive, where people are getting their monies from, whether it be from corporate contributions, from fossil fuels, that's what I know the Democratic base that's energized is looking for, and so I wait to see where those disclosures, the disclosure statements off of that.
We're going to take a quick break, just bring these guys back for a couple more questions before we wrap up this segment. You're watching What's the Deal? We'll be back right after this.
A lot of our economy, a lot of our society depends on people who are here, trying to achieve the American dream. You know, a lot of people, it's a dream deferred. I personally have many, constituents and neighbors who are actively seeking citizenship. But like some of these people, it takes 10 years, right? And I don't.
But there's a pathway for them.
Not a lot of them have to overstay a visa. A lot of them have to, make other arrangements not to appear on lists that might get them sucked up by ICE and things like that, and a lot of this breeds a whole black market that these people are exploited, along with the legal process that is not very easily understood or set up. A lot of our forefathers and generations before us came over, and it was not a very hard process to become a citizen. You got off, you went through the screening, and you signed your name in a book.
I did this like Ancestry.com stuff, and I know, 2 generations ago, my ancestors got on a boat in Siragusa, Italy, and they came over here, and they were pre-screened in Italy before they got on the boat, and then when they landed here, they went to Ellis Island, and we had a process where they went through, and then when they wrote down, well, I'm with this family member, I'm going to be living here, there was a path there. There was a way to do it.
Right, a very easy,
attainable path. I'm half Italian, half Irish. Most of my Italian and Irish family members came here just a couple of generations ago and went through that process. Right? So what's so hard about going with the path that's been in place for so long? I don't understand. You know what I mean? Tell me, enlighten me.
So it is my opinion that there's just not enough slots for citizenship for the people who are coming here to achieve the American dream. And I think that under this administration, we're not really getting any closer to that. If anything, we're regressing, and I think it'll hurt the economy overall.
President Trump heading back hard at the husband of senior White House advisor Kellyanne Conway. Trump tweeted the other day that George Conway is a total loser. He's a Republican lawyer, former Trump supporter, has become one of the president's harshest critics. He's now questioning Trump's mental fitness. You think this is Kellyanne using her husband to air her grievances, or you think there's just pandemonium in the Conway household?
I would not want to be at Thanksgiving dinner at the Conway household. I'll say that. I'm not sure what this really is. I think Kellyanne has been someone who ingratiated herself with the president. I think the president really liked her in 2016 and has kept her in that inner circle. So I think it's very strange. It's very odd to see where he is on this and where she has been a pit bull for the president.
The Prime Minister of New Zealand is promising that in the wake of the horrific mosque shootings last week, that they're going to strengthen the country's gun laws. Will New Zealand shooting put the issue of gun control back on the front burner here in our country?
I don't see it happening. I think Democrats bring it up a lot. I don't see it happening. It's tragic what happened. It's sad. Anybody who is of any religion that is worshiping in their house of worship should be allowed to do that in safety, regardless of what religion you are. They're moving quick, clearly, to pass some gun control laws down there. I don't see it. I don't think it's really bubbled up here in terms of that. I think some Democrats have talked about it and pushed it, but I don't see it going anywhere this year.
Do you think any of the Democratic candidates bring gun control back to the forefront?
I mean, it's in our party's platform. I would hope that this would bring it back to the forefront, but we know in America, our experience, that's not going to happen. The conversation has been greatly distorted by the NRA and the gun manufacturers. What I think Americans need to do is get back and actually read the Second Amendment, where it says a well-regulated militia. Yes, we have a right to bear arms, but I don't think that extremists such as the white supremacists who carried out this attack, or anybody else who's taking extreme forms of terror against innocent people, especially people in their houses of worship. That's not what the Founding Fathers wanted when they wrote the Second Amendment.
All right, well, guys, I want to thank you very much. We covered a wide range of topics tonight. We heard both sides, from the left, from the right, and as usual on What's the Deal, we talk it out, we put all our views on the table, but at the end of the show, we know enough that we will shake hands and respect each other's opinion. Guys, I want to thank you very much for giving us some time tonight on What's the Deal. I want to thank you for watching this segment, and don't go away. We're coming back with a segment right after this you're not going to believe. It's the Entrepreneur Spotlight, and we have some special entrepreneurs with us tonight. Our own team from Fuzz on the Lens, who puts this show together every week. They're award-winning filmmakers for their released film, Abnormal Attraction. And we're going to have the Fuzz Boys right here with us next to talk about their newest venture, the release of Abnormal Attraction. You're watching this. All right, welcome back. Every week we try to bring on an entrepreneur, an innovator, a small business owner, people that are starting up, people that are getting something going, inspiring others to go after their dreams. And you know what? This week, our entrepreneurs are homegrown. They're from right here. It's our production team on What's the Deal. And I have with me tonight our director on What's the Deal and the director, writer, and producer of Abnormal Attraction, Mike Levy. Mike,
hey,
welcome in front of the cameras
tonight. It's good to be on this
tonight.
side of the camera for a change.
Isn't it? Mike, you have, your brother Jason, Steve Della Sala, you guys have been passionately chasing your dreams, which a lot of people don't even get the opportunity to do in life, but you guys are. And just recently with your film, Abnormal Attraction, you guys wrote it in 2014, and it's loaded with social commentary. Things are talked about in the movie that you wrote in 2014 that are almost happening today. You have a character called President Chump, long before President Trump was even an actual candidate. Tell us, our audience, now you're not the production crew, you're in front of the cameras, and we're talking about entrepreneurialism. What does it take to run your own business and chase that dream and chase the money to get that dream and actually start winning film festivals and putting your film into production?
Well, you know, it sounds like a cliche, but the main thing is you never give up. You got to just keep going with it. And that's something that we've been doing for years, and we knew that there was no plan B. If you're planning B, that's planning to fail. This is it. This was plan A. And, you know, we put together a really good team. You know, me, Jason, Steve, Bobby Privatera, Kyle Mullins, a lot of great guys together. And, you know, that helps. You know, no one man can do it by themselves. So that was the main thing, is that we had each other as like a support system. And, yeah, we did write this film in 2014. And a lot of things we kind of, in a way, a lot of people at the film festivals are saying, you guys kind of predicted what was going to happen. And the movie, you know, Abnormal Attraction, even though it's a comedy film, there is a lot of social commentary on it. And instead of it being the problems that are happening now in real life with races, you know, back and forth, we have it with the monsters and the humans. And that's how we kind of do it. And there's this one character that's kind of caught in the middle between the monsters and the humans. And he's basically, you know, says, we're all the same. You know, you don't have to force your opinion on someone, but you should respect the opinion.
I often feel like I'm trapped in that place between monster and human.
Right.
Why didn't you guys cast me in the monster
For sure,
human
you know,
role?
we should have. And I was just talking about this before with your brother. I says, you know, we definitely should have put you in the film. But hopefully, if there's a sequel, it's doing well, and it's on Amazon right now, and it's pretty much everywhere. But Amazon's the best place to get it.
I want you to take a look at a clip from Abnormal Attraction. These guys put their heart into this film. It's a horror film, but it's a funny one. Take a look.
Little horror comedy.
When you think you're alone in the dark, I am the reason you can't sleep at night. I'm the one that makes the hair on your neck stand up when your body begins to stiffen and you notice a bump rising from beneath the sheets.
Wait. Are you hitting on me?
I was out on a date when this schmuck calls me Frankenstein. My name is Frank Stein. It's Jewish.
They're not humans, and they shouldn't be treated like this. They do not exist to be our slaves.
I got you!
Baby?
There he was, with his sexy red beard and perfect little ass.
Oh, that's what I like to hear. Tell me more.
I found it.
I'm finally gonna be able to do to those monsters what they did to my family.
We're gonna give it to those dirty, rotten monsters tonight.
Let's get physical.
We've captured another one. He's one of those monster mashers.
How dare he come into this place, meant for monsters to live in peace?
We'll make them all pay, even if we have to do it one by one.
It's gonna be a full moon tonight, and all the freaks are out.
The hell you got me into here?
You can't persecute someone for being different than you are.
My prisoners are escaping!
Sand is ridiculous. Why can't I just do it with a wand? Ha! Ha ha ha! Yay!
Filthy little maggots, aren't they human?
Filthy indeed.
What are you doing?
Nothing. Nothing at all.
Listen here, Purple Nipple. I don't fight the females, so why don't you just go on your way and I'll go on my way? Okay, sounds good? Ooh. You like that?
Tell us a little bit about who all is in the film and where our audience can find it and get a copy.
For sure. So the movie stars Malcolm McDowell. Everybody knows him, Clockwork Orange. We have Gilbert Gottfried's in the film. Bruce Davison, Academy Award nominee Bruce Davison's in the movie. Leslie Easterbrook, the cop from Police Academy. Ron Jeremy makes a little cameo appearance in the film, but his part's a secret, so we'll just, you have to see the film to know what he does. Vic DiBitetto, who is a YouTube sensation, big comedian all over the place. He's the bread and milk guy.
I got a guy.
Right, he's in the film. There's just Melanie Iglesias is in the film. Tom Hanks' brother, Jim Hanks, is in the film. Steve Buscemi's brother, Mike Buscemi's in the film. So we just got a slew of people in this movie. Bethany Watson from Z100, she's in it. We could go on, the list goes on and on.
For those of you who don't watch the very end of this show, it says Fuzz on the Lens every week because these guys have been producing my TV shows for as long as I can remember. They're always credited, but not all the credit they deserve because they're working day and night and they're always there for us at What's the Deal. Mike, thank you for coming in front of the camera tonight. Thank you for watching What's the Deal. Go to fuzzonTheLens.com, buy a copy of Abnormal Attraction. Go on Amazon, Video on Demand, get Abnormal Attraction. And if you want to be abnormal like me, go watch Abnormal Attraction at fuzzonTheLens.com. Mikey, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. If you have an idea, if you have a business, if you have an innovation, an entrepreneurial idea that you want to bring to our audience, reach out to us. You can find us at whatever Lamont wants to use. Send us your ideas. Contact us. We want to have you on the show. We want to talk about your products, your ideas, and we want to bring it to our national audience. Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of What's the Deal. We'll see you again next week.